Welcome back to another Microsoft Azure tutorial. So today we are going to be talking about Azure Functions. So Azure Functions are a really great tool for those of you who might have a project that ranges from large to small. I always kind of thought of them as like building blocks in a sense. So they are very customizable. You can do a lot of different things with them. But the nice thing about them is they're really easy to get up and running. So it's really nice because you can customize them, but at the same time, you're not having to do a lot of the setup work that can naturally come along with it. So today we're going to cover at least just high level overview about what Azure Functions are, kind of give you some details about some resources that you can go and access if you're interested in learning more about this particular topic. And then in our second video, we're going to start covering the different types of Azure Functions. So Azure Functions come in different types, and we'll elaborate on what those types are. But in the second video, that was actually where we're going to start doing the coding aspect of it. So first things first, what are Azure Functions? Well, here's an overview of Azure Functions. Azure Functions allow you to run small pieces of code called functions without worrying about the application infrastructure. So a lot of times we've seen this before, trying to build programs can take a lot of setting up time. So you have to make sure the infrastructure is there. You have to make sure the software is up to date and that it's compatible with each other, and making sure that you have a server running, maybe in some cases a database, lots of different components. And so that obviously takes time. That takes money and time. And the idea behind Azure Function is you can basically define your code in these little pieces of called functions, but the infrastructure is taken care of for you. So it's very nice. Additionally, you can even do things like create sample APIs. You can do things like, hey, once this file is uploaded into one of my blob storages, maybe I want to have something happen in the background. So every time you create a new file, maybe go in there, take that file, process it, and maybe stick it in a database. So Azure Functions are great for doing something along that nature. With Azure Functions, the cloud infrastructure provides all the up-to-date servers you need to keep your application running at scale. This is a very big benefit of cloud computing services, is that as demand grows for your service and product, you can have that infrastructure automatically grow with that demand. That's a very powerful feature about cloud computing services. Additionally, when we talk more about functions, we're going to see that functions are triggered by different things. And so when we're talking about a function, we're going to use this term called trigger. And so a trigger just simply represents a specific type of event. Now, there's multiple types of triggers. There is triggers that respond to changes in like a database, for example. You could even say changes to like maybe an Azure blob storage, like I was saying before. You can even do HTTP requests. So that's actually the function that we're going to do our first one as an example. So we can send a GET request. We could send a POST request. We could send different types of requests. And the idea behind it is that when you call and you make that request, you now are triggering this Azure function. Also, we're going to be talking about running a function on a schedule. So you can say, hey, every morning at 6:30 a.m., run this function that might go out and collect news articles for me, store those news articles in a database, and maybe do some additional transformation. So the nice thing about, again, with Azure Functions, they're very customizable. So you can obviously see there's lots of different types out there, and some are going to meet your needs better than other ones, right? So if you need something that goes on a timer trigger, that might work perfectly for you. Also, a lot of this content is coming directly from Microsoft itself. So I'm trying to do my best to make sure there's links to the right pages and stuff like that. If I miss one by chance, let me know. And then at the end of the video, I will show you where this is. So I'll make sure to link the GitHub repo as well. Okay, so why use Azure Functions? What's the big dealio? So functions are a great solution for processing bulk data, integrating systems, working with the Internet of Things, and building simple APIs and microservices. So for example, maybe I have a really simple API I want to get up and running. Azure Functions could potentially be a good avenue for me to work with it. It's very simple. It doesn't take a lot of effort. and it gets it where I have something up and running relatively quick. Now, as mentioned in the previous slide, there's different templates. Those templates usually represent different types of triggers usually, but there's other things that you can be using them with. These are actually a list of all the different types of templates. So we've already talked about HTTP requests. We've talked about timer request, Azure Cosmos database. So these process new and modified Azure Cosmos database documents. Blob storage, we've talked about that a little bit. Queue storage, so this responds to Azure storage queue messages. So things like you could tweets, you can go and pull tweets and then put in a queue and all sorts of different stuff. Event grid, event hub, service bus queue, service bus topic. So there's lots of different templates out there. I'm not going to promise we're going to go through every single one, but I'll try to show you at least a few so that way you get the general feeling of what it's like to work with these different templates and how you can customize them to fit your needs. Additionally, each one of these do have links, so you can hover over these links and it will redirect you, if you so please, to go and explore it a little bit more. Okay, and then next, this is just high-level overview about what we're going to be covering. So right now, I am planning to cover HTTP triggers, time triggers, and then blob storage. So we will cover each one of these in a different video. They're going to be slightly similar, so there's going to be a lot. When you look at it, you're going to say this looks exactly the same, and then there's going to be parts of it you're going to say, wow, this is very different compared to the previous one. But the initial goal is to cover these 3 different types of functions that revolve around different types of triggers. Now, with most of the Azure services out there, there will be a couple different packages that you will need to install. We will go through them in each video in the beginning, highlighting what you need to install and what platform we're going to be doing this all in. We will be doing it in Microsoft Visual Studio Code. It's very easy to get up and running there with the different Azure services. So for right now, that's the plan. And then additionally, what I'm going to show you just kind of quickly, nothing too long, is I will be providing some links, just, going over what are Azure functions. My presentations, they're very simple. I try to kind of put in 10-minute scenarios, but there's also a lot of content out there. So I want to make sure you guys have access to those resources so that way you're not having to go jump around and read through a bunch of different documentation. And then in the first video, we will go over just common bugs that you might encounter, just common scenarios that, at least when I started using these, I was struggling with and mistakes I made. And, basically that's what I like doing in my videos right now, is sharing all the issues I've come across, because I'm sure some of you will encounter those issues as well. But if you do go to the documentation, they do have some quick starts for you as well. So these are some good options if you want to just get a very basic Azure function up and running. They also show you how to do things like connect to a storage account. So again, Microsoft Azure blob storage. You have some tutorials as well. These kind of give different scenarios. So it's like, okay, I can upload a photo, and then when I do that, I can resize it, and so on and so on. So the idea behind it is it's giving you different scenarios that if you wanted to explore it a little bit, you could. So here's open API definition. So for those of you who are interested in maybe creating an API, this is what it would look like. And then they have samples as well, concepts. So there's a lot here. Some of these go, obviously pretty deep if you're not careful, but yeah, there's lots of good documentation on it. So I think for most people, if you have a question, you can usually get it answered using the documentation. And then they also have some references for you as well and some how-to guides. How long has it been? Only 9 minutes. Goodness, that was like one of my quickest videos ever. All right, so that does it for video number 1. So if you have any just general questions about Azure functions, maybe scenarios you're considering, and if you want to just know if that's maybe a good way to go or something like that, feel free to put it down in the comments below. Otherwise, in our next video, I think we're going to be doing the HTTP trigger. Additionally, I did want to note, if you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing. We have content coming out all the time. So if you're looking for content related to Python, VBA, the JavaScript API for Office, SQL, all that kind of fun stuff, feel free to subscribe to the channel. So, and if you want up-to-date notifications, make sure to click the little bell, and then you should receive a notification when I upload videos, which can be quite frequent sometimes. Alrighty, everyone. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you in video number 2.